It's tournament season at First, and the next big one at Santa Anita Gulfstream and Express Bet is the Ultimate Betting Challenge this Saturday, March the 2nd. The Ultimate Betting Challenge features every race at Gulfstream Park on Fountain of Youth Day and Santa Anita Park on Big Cap Day, making it a coast-to-coast betting extravaganza. Buy in for $6,000, $5,000 live bankroll, and compete against players from around the country for massive cash prizes and NHC seats. First, we'll seed 4 NHC seats to the prize pool, and all cash entry fees will be distributed back as prizes. At 150 players, that's $150,000 in cash prizes, plus those 4 NHC seats. Play in the UBC on site at Gulfstream or Santa Anita, or jump in online with ExpressBet. Head over to expressbet.com/tournaments for more information and to register to play. Dan Illman, Mike Beer, taking a look at race number 11 at Gulfstream Park on Fountain of Youth Saturday. This is the Gulfstream Park Mile for older horses. It's a one-turn event. Let's take a look at the field for this Grade 2. You've got several runners coming out of the Grade 3. Fred Hooper going a one-turn mile. Tumbarumba won that race, but it was a blanket finish with Castle Chaos and Steel Sunshine making it close.
Yeah, I thought this was a really tough race to decipher, Dan. I don't know about you. There doesn't seem like there's a ton of pace in here, which was the first issue that I had with it. The horses coming out of the Hooper last time, which feels like a pretty good prep for this race, maybe an ideal prep for this race. I don't know how much I love those horses. I don't know, man. I thought this race was wide open.
Getting a big class dropper in the 4, Il Morocco, who could certainly impact this race, but the Timeform US pace projector is key. And Mike mentioned in the beginning, he doesn't think there's a lot of pace on paper. Timeform US believes there's none. It's the rare gray bar, no speed situation. It helps horses like Tumbarumba. It helps horses like Il Morocco, horses that can stay close to the pace. They're not exactly speedsters, but they won't be affected by a glacial early tempo.
That's very true. I think it could be a big advantage for the 4 and the 5. Listen, it could even be an advantage for a horse like Ticking, who's going to be a long shot in here and can just sort of get forward and maybe fall into a trip in this race. It does sort of add another element to this race, though, Dan, where there's just a lot going on.
Castle Chaos is the number 1, and this is a horse that's hit the board in his last 7 starts. And I thought he ran pretty well in the Fred Hooper, just considering he was wide most of the way, and he kind of got into the race with a 4-wide bid on the turn and was still chugging along to just miss by a nose. Now, the lack of pace in this race might work against him somewhat, but he continues to kind of outrun his odds each and every time and figures to be a good price yet again.
He's just gotten really good in his most recent starts. And didn't you feel like there was a chance he could be more forward in this race, Dan? He's got the inside. He's not like some kind of plotter. He could certainly use his speed and get a trip here. That didn't happen for him last time in the Hooper. They wound up moving him out wide and raiding and then making a big run in that race. And he actually ran really well in there. I don't know, man. I think there's a better trip coming this time. He's a super dangerous horse.
Now, Witt, on the other hand, is going to need some pace. He appears to be, when he's in his sprint races, and he's also campaigned in middle distances on the turf, when he's sprinting, he appears like a one-run late kicker. Here's his start last time at off-turf race. This is the Belmont Turf Sprint Championship during the Belmont at the Big A meet, and he got wired in here. He's going to kick on for 3rd. The runner-up would come back, run 3rd in a New York bred stake with a 91 buyer.
Yeah, he's going to get out of the clear a little late here and make up a lot of ground. He runs fine in here. We'll see, what kind of trip he can pull. And then I guess we'll just see what he has left in the tank now, Dan, as a 5-year-old. Personally, I'm happy to see maybe Pletcher pointing him back to dirt now as an older horse. I never liked him as a turf horse. I know he's a stakes winner on the grass and he's Grade 1 placed on that surface. I don't like him as a turf horse. I did really like him as a dirt horse as a 2-year-old, though.
Steel Sunshine, the number 3, has the fastest Timeform US late pace rating, but if he can't stay close to the pace, he could be adversely affected by the expected slow race flow. I liked him last time out going into the Fred Hooper, was very disappointed that he broke slow, was down inside last, then got to the outside, had to go very wide into the stretch. He was still running at the end. For a second, it looked like he had a shot at it.
Yeah, it really did. I mean, it felt like the poor start. They got up very awkwardly. It really hurt him in that race, but he did make another run. I mean, but that's what this horse does. I mean, every single start on his page, for the most part, he is making a run at the end of those races. That pace projector really works against him, I think, Dan, maybe more than anyone else. But he's going to show up and fire a shot.
I think Antonio Sanos found a really good spot for the 4, Il Morocco, who's just kind of a cool horse. You remember he was thrown to the wolves last year in many Kentucky Derby preps in South Florida, but getting his head bashed in by those better horses at that time didn't work against him. He came back and became a graded stakes winner. He just missed in the Fayette 3 starts back, and he had no chance last time out in the Pegasus World Cup. But the class drop works, and I also think cutting back to a one-turn mile, I think this is what he wants to do.
I don't mind him cutting back to the one-turn mile either. He's got plenty of tactical speed for them to get the right trip in this race. And I like the form that he sort of found second half of last year, Dan. I hated the trip that he got in the Fayette, and he almost won that race anyway. He had no chance in the Clark with the trip that he pulled that day. He didn't break that sharply, and there was no pace. And he wasn't going to win the Pegasus World Cup anyway, but being 5 wide around the track didn't help his chances either. This horse is completely dirtied up. I really like this spot for him.
Yeah, considering his running style, considering his class, if you don't like the horses in the Hooper, Il Morocco is the horse to beat in this race. And again, there are no Senor Buscadors and National Treasures for him to run down this time. Tumbarumba's up next. Very honest performance last time out to just get up in the Hooper. His second start off of a very short layoff. He was on a hard chase behind this favorite Hijazi turning into the stretch, Mike, and he's really going to dig down deep to beat 3 of these. To his outside is Castle Chaos. On the far outside, we'll see Steel Sunshine. Somehow, some way, Tumbarumba gets it done.
He is going to get it done. He's closer to the pace than Castle Chaos was, than Steel Sunshine was, and he got first run on those horses, and he just gets it done. I think part of the issue I have with the Hooper, Dan, is that race kind of, at least in my opinion, fell into their laps a little bit because Hijazi, the Baffert favorite, they're just totally stopped at the end of that race. I don't know, man. I don't want to be too hard on him. This horse has run nothing but good races, and Brian Lynch has done a really good job with him. In some ways, he's the horse to beat. I just don't know if I want to bet him at a short price this time.
Shaq Diesel, the number 6, was a horse that ran in some really tough spots as an early 3-year-old, and I like that they gave him plenty of time to mature. And ever since he's come off of a lengthy layoff, he's run 3 solid races, including this first level allowance over course and trip at Gulfstream Park. Now, the pace wasn't exactly fast. He was able to stay up close, but he's got to fight for it, Mike, and he does get it done. It's a giant step up in class, but this horse's confidence at least should be sky high.
True. I like the job that Fox has done with him since he's taken over. And this is a pretty good win for this horse because you're right. The pace, it wasn't a great setup for him, and the runner-up probably had a better trip. But this horse wins it anyway. I don't mind them stepping him up to take a shot against this field, Dan, but I'm probably not going to bet him.
As a very lightly raced 4-year-old, it's fair to predict that the 7 ticking still has some upside potential, and he's coming into this race the right way off of a score against high-level allowance company at 7/8 of a mile at Gulfstream. And we see ticking, he showed good tactical speed, and you mentioned in the open, he can stay close to the expected slow pace. He finishes this off pretty nicely. Now he's got to deal with a big hike in class.
Yeah, I mean, he's a huge price in this race, but he gets the job done, and it's the fastest race he's ever run by a long shot. All 3 of his wins, 7 furlongs, 2 dead. It feels like he's one of those horses. He wants those sort of elongated one-turn races. That's what he gets here.
Gilmore's another horse coming out of the Hooper. He just didn't threaten after a slow start. The problem with a horse like Gilmore, who has shown some late pop in one-turn mile races as a late-running sprint type, is that he is completely pace dependent. And if this pace is slow, he could be really up against it.
Yeah, the trip is going to be very important to him. One of the reasons that I left him open in here and that I want to use him somewhere in here, depending on prices, to me, the Hooper is just a complete throwout for this horse. He got bumped a couple of times at the start of that race, and he wound up way too far back in there to have any real chance to impact it. So I'm going to put a line through that one. He ran 1 or 2 races last year that would give him a real chance in it.
Yeah, even his Pennsylvania Derby at race was just too far over a course that was very wet against tougher competition. He had no chance in that race. Really didn't run that badly. Let's take a look at our top picks in here. You're going with Il Morocco. Again, if you don't like the Hooper horses, this horse fits from a class standpoint, a pace standpoint, a distance standpoint. It'll be interesting to see how they bet this race. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes off a slight favorite.
Yeah, that's the most important thing to me, too. I don't want to bet him at any kind of a short price, but maybe he won't go favorite in here, Dan. I like him more than anyone else in the race, so I have him on top. Gilmore was the other horse for me. We'll see if he can rebound.
I think Tumbarumba's still a little bit underrated. He showed some class last year when he won the Oklahoma Derby at 1.125. And with his tactical speed, he's going to be right there when they turn for home. 4825 for Mike, 5132 for me. It's the Gulfstream Park Mile on Fountain of Youth Saturday. Good luck.